The plan to burglarize the DNC and to bug the phones of its chairman, Larry O'Brien, had originated before mid-April 1972, as confirmed in a letter addressed to journalist Jack Anderson dated back to April 15, 1972. The letter came from the New York publisher of the local Manhattan Tribune, William Haddad. Haddad, who was close to the Democratic Party, informed Anderson that he had learned from a New York private detective agents working for the Republicans were planning to wiretap phones in the DNC at the Watergate, especially the phone of Chairman O'Brien. According to Haddad, the operation was supposed to be carried out by the so-called November Group Incorporated, a New York City-based working group of leading PR people from the Big Apple that had been founded by G. Gordon Liddy a couple months earlier to work out a strategy for promoting Nixon's re-election on behalf of President Nixon's Committee to Re-elect the President, or CRP. It is theorized that the motive for the break-in had to do with O'Brien's knowledge of a political scandal involving President Nixon. In 1968, O'Brien was appointed by Vice President Hubert Humphrey to serve nationally as the director of his presidential campaign and by Howard Hughes to serve in Washington as his public policy lobbyist. O'Brien was elected in 1968 and 1970 by the DNC to serve nationally as its chairman. With the upcoming presidential election, Howard Hughes' former business associate John H. Muir, who was working with Vice President Humphrey, wanted to feed misinformation to Richard Nixon. In 1956, Richard Nixon's brother, Donald Nixon, borrowed $205,000 from Hughes and never repaid the loan. Information about this surfaced during the 1960 presidential election campaign, embarrassing Richard Nixon and becoming a real political liability. From 1968 to 1970, Hughes withdrew nearly $500,000 from the Texas National Bank of Commerce for contributions to both Democrats and Republicans, including presidential candidates Humphrey and Nixon. Hughes wanted Donald Nixon and Mayer involved, but Richard Nixon was opposed to their involvement. Mayer told Donald that he was sure that Democrats would win the election because they had considerable information on Richard Nixon's illicit dealings with Howard Hughes that had never been released, and that Larry O'Brien had the information. The possibility of his findings about Hughes' illegal contributions to the Nixon campaign was too much of a danger for Nixon to ignore, and Watergate became a target of Nixon's intelligence. In early 1972, Liddy presented for approval two versions of a plan drawn up by Liddy and E. Howard Hunt for political intelligence activities. The plans were presented in closed-door meetings in the office of Attorney General John Mitchell, with Mitchell, John Dean, and Jeb Magruder present at both Liddy presentations. These plans, in their various incarnations, have become known as Gemstone. There was no mention of the DNC in that presentation. The Watergate co-conspirators were detained on June 17, 1972, volunteered testimony about an earlier May 28, 1972 burglary they said they had been involved in at the Watergate, and also volunteered information about two previous unsuccessful attempts during Memorial Day weekend, 1972. There was no evidence or external knowledge of any such earlier burglary that could have been used to prosecute them, on the additional accounts of illegal entry and wiretapping for any such earlier burglary without their volunteer testimony. 6 days later, Nixon and his staff conspired to cover up the break-in, and especially its connection